I from the sort of starting to be aware that the series was being made to being cast as Renly, there was about a year, and during that time I was sort of aware of it being cast. Friends of mine were involved with it, and so by the point that I sort of came to Renly, I had read Game of Thrones, the novel, and actually that was kind of fantastic because it kind of gave me a real scope of what it was about, and the kind of size of the world that they were going to have to create, and have managed to do fantastically, I think. And so yeah, I sort of got into the novels that way. I then once we started shooting, between the first and the second series, I read Clash of Kings, but I did sort of stop there because there's so much for your head to get around that from an acting point of view, I didn't want to know too much about where everything was going, because it started to sort of fill my thoughts a little bit. I mean, they're just really engaging novels, and you start thinking more about the novel than you do about your work. And so all right, okay, it's time to put the books down. But I did very much, and I always had my little sort of workbook with pages from the script, from the novels rather, on me, just to go back to every now and then. But that's kind of a personal thing. But
so it was a valuable tool in fleshing out the performance.
Absolutely, I think it's such an amazing sort of enterprise to try and to recreate a world from a novel in any circumstance to put it to film. It takes a lot of endeavour from all the departments, and from my point of view, it really helped understand, as I say, the politics involved, the logistics about how, we're talking about armies of tens of thousands of men, and that raised the stakes about when you're in a scene talking about, that army's going to kill that army, because my character Renly Baratheon is in King's Landing for most of it, and that meant that everything was very far away, but it was good to have a context for just how big the world was, I think.
Is Renly really a goodie or a baddie? Because he seems cultured and elegant, but not beyond a bit of treachery.
I don't know. I don't really see Renly as being treacherous. I think goodie or baddie is part of why George Martin's work is fantastic, and why HBO have done with it, creating a very, in my opinion, a fantastic television drama, is that they've really focused on the humanity of it and how humans work, and that no one's really a goodie or a baddie. Everyone has motivations for what they do. Everyone is in a circumstance or a context which affects what they do, the decisions they make. And I think Renly is very much in that situation. He makes decisions based on the circumstances he's in and what he wants. And I think what he wants is for Westeros to be a flourishing, fantastic, cultured, enlightened kingdom. And so in that sense, I really don't think he's in any way treacherous. He makes political decisions at certain points in the series, and I think that's possibly the wisest thing he could do, really.
All right. We've seen a picture, and it's in the public domain, of him wearing a crown. Do you have any comment to make about that for season 2?
I love that. It's fantastic. It's in the public domain. Absolutely, it's in the public domain. And what a fantastic crown it is too. Well, I mean, we know that Renly's coming back, and I think he's probably going to try and take this opportunity to make a stamp on the kingdom in whatever way he chooses. And you can sort of read into the teasers as you will. Obviously, readers of the book will know lots about what's going to happen. But I know that I think for everyone, readers or not, the TV series will have some punches to pull, and it will be really exciting watching, I think.
Have you ever been involved in misdirection, where you feed things to the press that aren't true?
Interesting. Do you know what? Actually, I did an interview recently, and at the end of which they asked me, is there anything you could change about yourself? And I went, sometimes I say things I don't mean. And then I realised that would kind of kibosh their whole interview. No, I've never been involved in active misdirection. No.
But you wouldn't tell me anyway, would you?
Probably not. No.
There are a lot of clues as to Renly's motivations and characters in the first book. How did you find the building blocks to make him a credible character?
Again, it's a really good question. I mean, I think again, the difference, it's been commented on a lot. The difference between the novel and the series is that the novel is constructed from individuals' perspectives at every point, and that leads to some fantastic storytelling on George's part, where there's a great moment where Maisie's character, Arya Stark, hears voices and she doesn't know who they are. And in the books that works fantastically well, because you don't get to find out who they are specifically until later on. Whereas in a television series, that necessarily has to work differently, and they have to have different moments of suspense. Now, with Renly, he is very much a character that is seen by other characters in the first books, and I did have to sort of, from other people's perspective on him, fashion a character. But that came again to just going back and making him human. Where is he? You know, it's all, you know, decent actors stuff. You know, who is he? Where is he? What does he want? And what's getting in the way of what he wants? And that makes it an easier sort of progression to finding a fully fledged character. But you do have to sort of find sort of more interesting things as well. But that was where I started.
Sure.
So that's where I started, I guess.
It's been described as Lord of the Rings crossed with the Borgias. Is that a reasonable description?
Well, it's an interesting one. I've heard Lord of the Rings / The Sopranos bandied out a lot, and I guess similarly the Borgias. I mean, the Borgias it has a similar sort of monarchical, you know, monarchs and stuff structure. So that would make sense. I guess, you know, it's drama written for adults in a 10-show format, and I think there are some similarities for me with the way that Sopranos stories were structured, with a patriarch and families feuding. That made sense to me. You know, essentially these are families. The fact that they're kings and queens makes no difference. They're families feuding over power, and that's very human in whatever situation you're in. So that those kind of comparisons do make sense to me. And the Lord of the Rings sort of, I guess that refers to the feel of where they are in this sort of invented history. But it's slightly more human than that, I think. You know, there's less. Well, you know, there aren't other. I guess there aren't so fantastical elements, but yeah.
Renly has been teased a bit for his sexual orientation in Game of Thrones, and is being gay looked down on in the universe of Game of Thrones?
Again, it's a really good question, because it was something that we had to create for ourselves. Myself and Finn Jones had to have an awareness of what it meant, what they were risking. We sat down with Brian Cogman, who works on the show, has written episodes for the show, and he's a really big Game of Thrones and George Martin sort of expert, really, and he really helped us sort of figure out what was at stake for them, and what it meant in this, because it's an invented place at an invented time, so there are certain, you know, cultural things that you could take for granted, and I think we were kind of hoping not to take anything for granted and try and figure out what it meant, and essentially it boiled down to these two men happening to be in love, and the idea of being gay is a very modern idea, I guess. We sort of codified it in law and changed laws in the last 150 years, depending on the country you're in. Things have changed recently, and therefore that's created a modern idea of what it is, what that sexuality means. And I think, you know, there's not the same labels in Westeros, but equally it is something that is dangerous, especially, I think, maybe I won't say that actually, but I think it has an impact on things like being in a position of power for different reasons.
What's been the reaction from the gay community towards the character?
Sort of entirely positive, really, that I'm aware of. You know, I've had some lovely letters and things like that, and I was interviewed by a magazine called AfterArk.com, and which sort of caters for a gay readership, and they were fantastic. I sort of think they're big fans of the show, but I mean, yeah, it's not like I suddenly have a a sort of a phone to the gay community spokesman. He's like, "Is it all right? Is that all right?" But my understanding of what I've come across has been that it's kind of been a positive thing to have. And I think it's positive generally to have representations of all types of people on television in whatever context. So yeah.
Can I ask you something specific about acting? We were just talking about the clapperboard issue. When you get yourself into the zone and you're in perfect, somebody comes along with you and snaps something in front of you to snap you right out of it. How do you actually get back into the mood after?
Often you'll find, members of the crew are very sensitive actually to what we do, and hopefully we're sensitive back, I hope. But you find that people don't go right in front of your face. If it's right up there, they'll click it and that's fine. But so much is going on that's part of the skill, I guess, about working on screen, and it's something I'm still learning and enjoying sort of the new experience of. But it's you have to create a world for yourself, which is then physically, literally populated by 50 people who shouldn't be there in plastic boxes and things like that. So you have to find ways around that. And the clapperboard specifically doesn't usually cause any problems, but now it probably will. Next time I'm on set, I'll be like,
I've ruined it now.
Thinking about what Martin said about no, but yeah.
Well, talking about learning about acting, can you tell us how you got into acting? And you're at Lambda, I believe, and the John Thor Foundation?
No, John Thor Memorial Foundation, yeah. But basically, I got into acting when I was very sort of young at sort of high school. Steve Thompson, who's recently written an episode of Sherlock, and I believe written episodes for Doctor Who, was my maths teacher. And he came along to school and directed these great, fantastic theatre plays, and really got a bunch of us who were around my age at that school into acting, really. And that sort of passion kind of rode over my teenage years and university. It sort of took over my university life, really. And
to the detriment of your studies?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think academia was something that I was ever going to pursue, really. I was very fortunate to be at a fantastic university and lovely people around, but there was so much theatre to be doing with wonderful people. And anyway, so yeah, I did that, and then I got out in the big wide world and did what actors do and worked in a pub and that kind of stuff. And then I sort of really knew I wanted to train, so I went to Lambda for the 2-year course, which is a great place to learn and be around other people who are passionate about what they do. And while I was there, I was very fortunate to be sort of supported. There's a big financial commitment these days to do any kind of training, and the John Thor Memorial Fund sort of help me out with that, and what they also do is they sort of connect you with people, and Claire Eden, who is involved in the Ministry of Chance, I met her through that circumstance, and she's been fantastic and very supportive ever since, and I really sort of owe a lot of my ability, being able to train to them, really. And that's how I got involved with the Minister of Chance as well. So.
Right. Well, Claire actually wondered if your dreams of being an actor when you're working in a pub, compared to how it actually turned out. What were the fantasies?
Oh, right. What were the fantasies? Well, that's an interesting question. I guess when still, and when you've just left uni and you've had all this, wonderful time to sort of think about what you want to do. Really early on, you just want to work and you just want to do anything, just and learn from other people, so I remember saying to someone, I'll do anything. I'll just get me in the room, and that's not necessarily the best headspace to be in all the time, but get opportunities. And so, I think I always thought whatever sort of, whether it be theatre, radio, or film or television, you want to work with the people who are at the top of their game and produce fantastic, moving or entertaining drama. And so in that sense, I've been really fortunate, and I feel very sort of blessed, really, to be able to get a chance to do a bit of that quite soon after leaving drama school, I guess.
All right, then, fantasising now forwards, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, 10 years. Probably on the moon with Newt Gingrich. Political answer. No, sorry, I don't know why that popped into my head. No, in 10 years, I imagine I will. What would be lovely is to be working and to be working with people whom I respect, and to be telling stories that are engaging and maybe tell us a little bit about ourselves. I know I'm not being specific, but I guess theatre is part of my life, and I hope to work on the stage until I'm physically incapable of doing so. But I'm really, really excited about what acting on screen is about, and that's a sort of kind of relatively new for me, in that, you know, I've been acting on stages since I was sort of 10, and screen work is a sort of new palette for me to play with, so it's really fun.
So which would you choose, I mean, if you really had to choose?
Oh, that's unfair.
I know, it's very unfair, but
I'd sneak a camera in and make my own movies while I was working backstage. I really couldn't. At this point, I feel sort of, I couldn't choose between the two at the moment.
What's the appeal of theatre for you? What's the actual feeling that makes you so enthusiastic for it?
I think it's getting people in the same room, and I think that's becoming ever more important. I think there's something really powerful about theatre that actors would call it a discussion, because you're sharing with the audience. Obviously, you know, there are a few theatrical forms where the audience get to immediately respond, but because you're in the same room creating a story, or, you know, putting forth ideas, I think that's really important, and I think there's a value in that. And especially as we move forward, technology is a fantastic tool. It's a fantastic tool, but it's getting in between people, and I feel live theatre performance is a real opportunity to bring people together. It's a community thing, you know. It's thousands of years old in its tradition, and I think that's something that's really exciting to be part of, and you're part of something bigger than, you know, yourself, or whatever. But yeah, that's what I think I value about it, I guess.
You've done some rather more traditional Radio 4 projects. How does that compare to the Minister of Chance experience?
Well, I mean, you know, actually, the way we made Minister of Chance was, in many ways, a traditional radio drama. We got in a studio, and we recorded with some actors, and they did some Foley, and it kind of felt kind of similar. It was a different studio physically to the Radio 4 stuff, but it's kind of the most fun you can have as an actor, because you do just get asked to do anything, and that's kind of really great, especially when a director turns to go, "Oh, we haven't got the Polish shopkeeper voice, can you just do that?" And you're like, "You cast me as an 18-year-old, you know, student, what are you talking about?" They go, "Just do it." Okay. And so that's kind of exciting, and Minister of Trance was a similar kind of feel. It was great for me. There were a bunch of guys on it who I was at drama school with, and so that was really fun and nice, yeah, so it's kind of similar.
Your involvement in that and Game of Thrones puts you in a science fiction piece for adults and a fantasy piece for adults. It's as if you're trying to bridge that gap,
yeah,
you know, between kids' movies and kind of adult movies.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I never really thought about it like that, but yeah, I guess I don't know what to say about it. But
are you a fan of the kind of things that are more firmly for kids, like kind of Harry Potter and things like that?
Do you know what? I'll be honest. I've sort of, I don't know if it was an age thing or not, but I sort of missed the Harry Potter moment. But I recently have sort of thought, okay, I should sit down and watch these, and maybe read them first, or I don't know. But I do, you know, I do like stories that are well told. So whether it's designed for family or not, you know, if it's a, you know, I mean, I love the Chronicles of Narnia stuff, you know, and I was that age that we had the BBC versions that I still sort of seared in my memory, you know, and I'd kind of like to revisit those, I think. But yeah.
You were in HBO's Into the Storm as well as Game of Thrones. How did those two experiences compare?
Oh, that's easy, because Into the Storm, I played a pilot, and in a story about Churchill, which was fantastic, and you know, Brendan Gleeson was this incredible actor who I've long respected, and it was like my first day on a big set, so that was basically terrifying. And Game of Thrones was terrifying, but for different reasons. By that time, I'd sort of seen a bit more of how big stuff works. But you know, Into the Storm, I was playing a pilot. We were on an airstrip at somewhere in England. I'm not sure where we were, but it's a few years ago now. But there were Spitfires there. There were actual real Spitfires and a Hurricane, which I got to climb into, which was one of the coolest things I'll probably ever do. There were, you know, a huge amount of supporting artists and there was a massive amount of crew, so it felt like a really big day. And because it was only, you know, I was only there for a day, but it felt like a really big sort of, you know, wonderful and exciting day at a theme park where you had to do a teeny bit of work, and but it didn't feel like work, obviously. Whereas Game of Thrones, you know, I knew that I was going to be involved for several months and indeed years, and so that felt like the start of a journey. Whereas, you know, Into the Storm was just wild, and it was, you know, I was just about to go to drama school, so it was great. I loved it.
We were talking earlier about being impressed by people, and you were talking about your professional attitude that you decided to have about not falling apart in front of people like Brendan Gleeson and so forth.
Yeah.
But like me, I think you've crumbled once or twice.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's that thing of like, I guess we were sort of saying that as an actor, you sort of feel like, well, if I have to operate as a professional in this job, you have to be able to do your job, whoever might be working you're working with. And so, yeah, I mean, I was sort of mentally prepped myself for moments like when you're on set and Brendan Gleeson is doing a fantastic performance as Winston Churchill, and you have to just be. Although it has to be said that helped on that day because the pilot was nervous, so maybe that fed into it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, there are certain moments. I think I was saying to you, like if I met the Welsh Rugby team, I think I'd be in bits on the floor. You know, I just that's where I'd get starstruck, I think.
Are you prepared to tell us about your Twitter story about the Welsh Rugby team?
Oh, I was just saying that I realised that when the Welsh Rugby, some of the members of the Welsh Rugby team, when they're at the World Cup, were on Twitter, and that was, you know, I sort of used Twitter sort of fairly. I hadn't used it a lot at that point, and I was like, oh, okay. And I sort of followed a couple of them, and I think it was George North who was like tweeted about wanting to watch TV series, any suggestions, and I was like, maybe Game of Thrones. So I just thought I'd subtly get it in there. You never obviously tweeted about that, but focusing on the game, obviously. But yeah, I guess that's who I'd be starstruck by.
If you had a free weekend, now you're very busy, but if you had a free weekend for a DVD sofa fest, what's a 10 disc set that you'll be going for?
At the moment, I'm sort of biding my time. I'm at this junction. I'm either going to watch The Wire all again because it was so brilliant. I feel like I should expose myself to some new material, and so I'm trying to think of if there's anything that I maybe I should sit down and watch the Harry Potters as a series and just watch the whole thing. Because I haven't. But as far as television goes, there's so much that's great on at the moment. I really want to get hold of Treme, and when you can, you know, Luck, and a lot of the HBO stuff. I'm really sort of looking forward to sitting down and watching.
If you're on a desert island, which CD disc would you take with you?
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah. What did Tony Blair say? No. He. I don't know really. I guess I would. I don't know. I have a really sort of eclectic mix. Stupid thing to say, but it's true. I don't I sort of buy the odd CD and then sort of borrow other people's iPods. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't hunt music out greatly. But I mean, Mumford and Sons would be lovely to listen to. I think. They're a great band. I think Kings of Leon. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe I'd choose like a compilation of like, you know, the 500 top songs of the 20th and 21st century or something.
Cheating a bit, but okay.
That is massively cheating, isn't it? But you know, with the wonder that is iTunes, you can do things like that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that's not a great answer, but there you go.
That's good. Can you tell us about the project, which I believe has changed its name?
Yes, Junk is a feature film that myself and Harry Lloyd, who's in Game of Thrones, make a I would say a brief appearance in. But it's recently been renamed Drek. It's still in post production, so they're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, and it's kind of an exciting venture. Justin Trefgon, who wrote and directed it, it's his vision, and it's kind of an exciting. I don't know really how to describe it, but I think it's set in a sort of dystopic sci-fi world, and I think but it's got a great gritty drama right at the centre of the story, and it's got some fantastic actors in it. Elliot Cowan and Elodie Young and Jonathan Price make some appearances. You've got these amazing cast members, and yeah, so that should be, it's going to be great, I think.
It's got some quite controversial and very current sci-fi ideas in it, like the idea of the police having a complete genetic database. How do you feel about that in this time of privacy and CCTV cameras?
Well, I think we're in a really. All days are transitional. All time, all periods are transitional. But it feels like at the moment we're entering a phase of identity that is unique in history. I'm not sure how I feel about privacy on lots of issues. I think I don't know really. We seem to be very concerned about tabloid newspapers being able to. I think Charlie Brooker was talking recently about this, actually, about tabloid newspapers being able to access your private information, but the way we sort of move information around these days, that's very legally combinable. Is that word combinable? Accessible by rather large companies, and that's something that I don't have a huge opinion on, but I think it's a really interesting debate to be had, and I think that is the same for how governments access information. Yeah.
To return to the theatre, because I've got these questions out of order, I'm cutting myself out of this. Do you have a preference for modern or classic roles? Because I'm thinking of Mark Raymond Hill's on the Boost.
Mark Ravenhill's on the Boost.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, I was very lucky, along with a few of my year at drama school, to be able to perform a new play by Mark Ravenhill, who's a fantastic playwright. And that was a piece of new writing. Funnily enough, as I left drama school, the first 3 plays I did were all new writing, and that is really exciting to be part of the theatre that is necessarily ours as a generation, or as a part of history. It's great to be part of what is being written now. That said, I was so excited to play a part from Terence Raskin isn't that old, it's only going back 30, 40 years, but to do a play that has been sort of in the canon for a while, that was exciting as well, for just different reasons. And I killed to get my hands on some Shakespeare, as I think a lot of actors would, or indeed some Rostand or some Ibsen or something. But you find I guess why actors do what they do. Some actors do what we do, is that we get to do different things every few months if you're lucky, and you get to work and you get to work with great people. The attraction is that you can do different things at different times. So yeah, does that help?
It does. Ideal Shakespearean role.
Ooh.
Will you ever play the Dome?
Actually, do you know what? I don't want to jinx myself. I'd love to play Iago and Edmund and all those guys. But there's something, there's some really interesting. I think Troilus is a fascinating character. He's got some great speeches, really challenging stuff. One day Richard III would be really, really fun, I hope. There are a lot. What's amazing about Shakespeare, whenever you get into it, there's always so much more to discover. I really feel like I'm not yet fully exposed to the histories. Really, there's so much to explore, and there's some fantastic. I tell you what though, Leontes in The Winter's Tale, I'd love to inch thick, knee deep. I'd love to give him a go, maybe in a few years' time.
Okay, you have coming up your do you have any particular film projects or TV projects beyond Game of Thrones and your commitments there?
I've, as they say, a few things in the pipeline. Travelling over to America to sort of meet people for stuff. But nothing sort of. My immediate schedule is kind of to travel to America and see what it's like and kind of enjoy myself a bit. I'm working on shorts that I produced last year.
Tell us about that.
It's called David, and if you go to davidsfilm.com, you can have a look at the trailer. That is it's a project that a few of us got together and made. We entered a film competition and won a prize, and our prize with the film competition was the Smoke and Mirrors 48-hour film competition. Our prize was we were given the opportunity to make a 15-minute short on 60mm film, and the sort of co-writers and I, Alex Warren and Jack Farthing, got together and wrote a short. And we got together with our company, which includes Toby Ross, Southall and George O'Brien, and we just kind of got together and made the film with some fantastic people who really, we had a fantastic DOP on it, and that's why it was just a real dream, really. And it's about three guys in a hole and they don't know why they're there. So, for a 50-minute short, we hope that's engaging enough, and I think it will be. But anyway, check out the trailer on the website.
That's fantastic. Gethin Anthony, thank you very much.